My name is Moshe Braun. I went to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor at the School of Art. There I studied industrial design. If you try to take something that's part and parcel of you and you try to squash it and pretend it doesn't exist, you're asking for serious trouble, because instead of now accessing that element on a healthy way, now that desire that you have is going to simply filter its way around somewhere else, and it's going to cause you to ultimately want to satisfy that desire, but now in a very unhealthy way. Growing up in a traditional Jewish home, two things are really constant. One is that my mother kept a kosher home, and the second thing was that Friday night, no matter what was going on, we had to be home for Shabbos dinner. So that sort of routine made an impression on me. So once I was out of the house, I wanted those two things. In about 3 months into the year being in art school, I was now spending hours upon hours each day in the studio. And I started feeling to myself this feeling I never felt before, that I was beginning to get burned out from my artwork. That never happened to me before. So my art all of a sudden became like my work. Something inside myself began to make me take notice that the friends that I was making in college in the Hillel scene, in the kosher meal scene, I noticed that with them, they seemed to be like really enjoying college and really enjoying their studies and doing well. And I began to notice that on Shabbos, they didn't pick up a pencil, they didn't go to class, or they didn't go to the library. They enjoyed Shabbos for what Shabbos was. And I began to start thinking to myself, maybe there's something to this idea of keeping Shabbos. So over time, really over the next 2 years, that's what I did. I very slowly stopped going into the studio on Shabbos. Within a very short amount of time, I began to get rejuvenated. That time away from my artwork. You know, it's like when an artist steps away from a painting for a day or 2 days and comes back to the work, or let's say a week and comes back to the artwork. Wow, you have a totally fresh eye. I began for the first time in my life to question that, and I said, wait a second, you know what? God made me a Jew, and if He made me a Jew, so maybe I need to take this seriously. When I finished university, I was involved in a startup company at that point. I had a business partner, and we were involved in a fantastic project where I needed to make a decision if I was going to go on to the next stage. The combination of that and me getting to a certain point in my growth, my Jewish growth, I realized I needed to leave the world of industrial design. I needed to put that down, and I needed to really focus on the internal part of me, the deepest part of me, my neshama, and I needed to really develop that.
I could tell that it really wasn't for him what we were doing. He had the skill set. He had the ability to draft things perfectly, but his mind wasn't there. I could tell that his heart wasn't there.
What happened was I left the startup company in the middle of when I was engaged to be married.
Well, it was a bit of a shock.
Thank God my wife was totally supportive with me wanting to take time off of my professional career. At the time, it was the most natural thing I could think of. But when I look back on it, I'm really lucky that she didn't think I was like totally crazy. I've dedicated 3 full years really on this, just self-development, so to speak. What am I going to be doing? What's the next step? A member of my family introduced me to a senior industrial designer, a person who had been working in the field for decades. I didn't view it as like a life-changing meeting. I viewed it as like, okay, I'm going to meet with this person. Hopefully, you know, he can help me find some direction. You know, some meetings you go into, especially when you're younger, it can be very intimidating. I thought he was going to like help me to get maybe a job in a firm or in industrial design. In the back of the portfolio was this pocket of looser things I just threw in there. Something about it just caught his eye, and he just went right to those pieces. He's like looking at these pieces and he says, "What is this?" And I explained to him basically one was like a piece that said Mizrach, which meant east, facing towards Jerusalem. And I must have explained the significance of that to him. Another piece was a blessing for lighting of Shabbos candles, the brachot for Hadlakot Nerot. And I explained that. And he just said to me, like, he's just looking at those pieces, and he looked back at me and just like kind of looked me up and down, looked back at the pieces, and looked back at me. He looked me in the eyes and said, you should do this. You should pursue this. So I wasn't expecting that. At a certain point, I wanted to go into the rabbinate, to become a rabbi. Each one of my teachers, my rebbeim, really felt that my art should be the tool and the medium how to express that desire in having a positive effect on the world. That would be the channel to do it, my art. We'd been living in Jerusalem for almost 5 years. One of the things that I felt living in Jerusalem is, I hate to have to say this, but it's just the truth. I felt like a number. I felt like whether I'm there or not there, nobody could care less. So we moved to Ramat Beit Shemesh. But at the same time we arrived in Ramat Beit Shemesh, a very interesting person and his family also came. His name is Rav Kalman Menachem Shapira, who I quickly found out was the Piazetzner Rebbe, who was a descendant of a person who was known as the Eish Kodesh. There was something that spoke to me and something that was very natural about giving. And one of the things I found, and one of the reasons we came to Ramat Beit Shemesh to begin with, was because I couldn't handle feeling like a number anymore. I said to my wife, if we're gonna stay in Israel, we gotta move to a place where we can give to the community. I can't be like this anymore, just taking. I all of a sudden found myself in a place that felt good to be there. There was a rabbi, someone that I really connected with a mixed group of people that just were very down to earth. And one thing led to another, and the next thing I know, I'm like one of the Gabayim of this shul. And I'd never been a Gabbai before.
I see Mario thriving in his area of interest. His artwork is exceptional. I have a few pieces myself.